The story begins by introducing the best top-secret military squad in South Korea, Squad 709, renowned for its special missions. The only way to be promoted within this elite squad is through a survival duel. Every member must fight until only one remains. Tradition dictates that only one participant can move up the ranks. One day, a soldier emerged who left the entire squad out of service, injuring them so severely that they were left recovering for 448 weeks. This soldier, known later as Madman, due to his psychopathic demeanor in combat, terrified the other squad members. His name was Kim Ji-yuk. Due to his fearsome reputation, he was transferred by the squad commander, but after similar incidents, he was prematurely discharged. Although his legend persisted, the secret of his deeds eventually became known to the public. 3 years later, in a large office building, we see our main protagonist working at his desk for a company. Someone throws a tissue at him, hitting him in the face. It was his manager. The manager sarcastically asks if he thinks he's in a hotel and tells him to focus on his work, continuously throwing tissues at him. The employee finally looks up and tells the manager it's unnecessary to keep throwing things at him. Realizing these were the manager's used tissues, he says that there's no trash can near his desk and asks him to take them away. The manager, referring to him as Mr. Ji-yuk, insists he does it. Angered by the insult, Ji-yuk picks up his phone and messages an anonymous community of office workers, typing that his manager crossed a line by throwing dirty tissues at him while he was working overtime. Someone replies, questioning how a manager could do such a thing, especially without helping at all. Ji-yuk responds that if he didn't need the money, he would teach his manager a lesson and quit. He thinks about how his manager doesn't even have the right to treat him this way since he's not the one paying his salary. Despite his frustration, Ji-yuk realizes he must endure this. Lifting his pen, he briefly entertains the thought of killing his manager. Just then, a random notification appears on his phone, intriguing him. It mentions a puppet project, offering a chance to stop being a slave to capitalist society. Suddenly, he feels something strange. A screen appears in front of him with a message that his registration is complete, and he hears a mysterious sound, P.099 tester verification connection completed. Confused, Ji-yuk tries to take off his glasses but realizes a strange wire connects them to his head. A warning message states that if the glasses are not worn for over 60 seconds, a severe electric shock will be administered. He can't believe it but finds he can't remove them. These are the same glasses he's been wearing for a long time, so what's going on? Someone calls his name, Mr. Ji-yuk. It's a lady from his company named Suyeon. She asks if he's okay. Wearing his glasses, Ji-yuk tries to explain about the wire, but another warning appears, stating that if he shares any information about the glasses, he will receive a severe electric shock. Instead, he tells her he's fine and there's no problem. Suyeon is relieved and asks if he's free after work today. Just then, the manager enters and asks what they're doing, suggesting he join them to improve the mood. He tells Suyeon that Ji-yuk has to stay late, so why don't they go together? Ji-yuk sits back down, frustrated. The manager tells Suyeon not to pay attention to people like Ji-yuk, who have to work overtime due to their incompetence, and teases Ji-yuk about his pride. Suyeon returns to her desk, and Ji-yuk thinks the manager believes he's staying quiet because he has no pride, but he's doing it to maintain his social appearance. He realizes his biggest concern isn't the manager's insults, but the strange occurrences involving his glasses. Suddenly, a voice in his head announces, P.099, Kim Ji-yuk, age 28, job, office worker. The voice continues, stating it will soon inform him about his mission, and begins analyzing the people around him. Ji-yuk looks at his manager, and a scanning progress bar appears on his glasses screen. The manager, noticing Ji-yuk's stare, asks why he's looking at him like that. Toggle options appear on the screen, revealing the manager's name, Choi Joo-hik, and indicating he has been selected for the mission. The mission is for Ji-yuk to tell the manager not to curse at him. The voice also informs him that if he fails to succeed with his mission, a penalty will be applied. The manager then says to come with him to talk on the rooftop. Ji-yuk, still confused about the mission and the penalty, suddenly sees another notification on his glasses. A time limit for the mission of 10 seconds, with a countdown starting. Lost in his thoughts, Ji-yuk wonders if this was some kind of device created by the company, if they were testing it on the staff, and if it was written in the contract and he just didn't read it. The countdown reaches 0, and a notification appears that the penalty will be applied. Ji-yuk sees on his glasses screen that he has lost 50% of the money in his bank account. He pulls out his phone and checks his account details, confirming that he has indeed lost 50% of his money. Enraged, he screams and stands up from his chair. Other employees wonder what has happened to him. Hearing the scream, the manager drags him outside the office and asks if he is listening to him or not. Ji-yuk apologizes, and the manager lights his cigarette and says that he doesn't like people like Ji-yuk. He explains that he doesn't know if Ji-yuk is just bluffing because he works out, but the reason he keeps doing this to him is because he is always too lazy and has a loser attitude. The manager wants to make it clear that he is not avoiding teaching Ji-yuk a lesson because he is scared. It is because he doesn't want to dirty his hands with people like him. The manager also tells Ji-yuk to say that he is filth. Ji-yuk thinks that if he wants to have money to live, he has to hold on and suddenly apologizes to the manager. Suddenly, Suyin appears and asks Ji-yuk why he is holding himself back. She mentions that they were born at a time when it was hard to even afford a house by working their whole lives. They work hard every day for a company that overworks them to death. She suggests to Ji-yuk that he needs to learn how to fight against this slaving world. She also reveals that she has recorded the conversation between Manager Choi and Ji-yuk. Suyin tells Ji-yuk that it is not him who should be apologizing. Manager Choi, confused about what she is doing, tries to grab the recording from Suyin. As he moves his hand toward her, he asks if she is going to erase it. Afraid, Suyin suddenly feels relieved when Ji-yuk grabs Manager Choi's hand. Manager Choi, confused about what Ji-yuk is doing, angrily asks if they are both serious about this and demands that Ji-yuk let go. Suddenly, Ji-yuk's glasses screen displays a notification indicating that aggressive actions and words from the selected subject have been detected. In response, Ji-yuk tells Manager Choi that he should not relax his hand if he intends to throw a punch. Ji-yuk then receives a mission from the anonymous voice, and a toggle appears on his glasses, instructing him to hit the person who has verbally abused him on Adam's apple for a reward of a 200% return rate. Seeing this, Ji-yuk tells the manager that he has endured most of the things he has done to him, but the manager keeps repeating these actions. Manager Choi becomes more aggressive and successfully loosens his hand from Ji-yuk's grip, throwing a punch at him. However, Ji-yuk dodges it, chokes Manager Choi's neck, and tells him that his mouth does not smell good, so he should shut up. He then pushes Manager Choi, causing him to fall to the ground. Ji-yuk asks Suyin if she can do him a favor, and she says yes. Ji-yuk asks her to pretend that she did not see anything from now on. Ji-yuk receives a notification that his mission has been accomplished and he will be rewarded for his success. He sees on his glasses that he got a 200% return rate and becomes happy. Manager Choi, still confused, asks Ji-yuk how he dares to hit his boss. Ji-yuk receives another notification that there is no change in the aggressive attitude of the subject. He receives another mission: teach the subject a lesson with a reward of a 500% return rate. Ji-yuk wonders who is behind assigning these missions to him, but it does not matter anymore. He realizes that for the first time since joining the company, he is finally doing something he enjoys. Hearing this, Manager Choi stands in a fighting posture and tries to punch Ji-yuk, but Ji-yuk grabs his punch and smiles. Using his muscular strength, he grabs Manager Choi's neck, chokes him, and then collides the manager's head with the ground. Manager Choi loses consciousness, and Ji-yuk receives a 500% return. Seeing this, Ji-yuk becomes even happier. He loosens his shirt tie and wonders if they are going to hand out so much money so easily. His account balance becomes 1.7 billion won. In another scene, we see Ji-yuk during his job interview. The interviewer asks Ji-yuk to share his ambitions for the job application. Ji-yuk replies that he has an exceptional ability to complete tasks, describing himself as an individual who flawlessly completes the assigned tasks. Back to the story, after knocking down Manager Choi, Ji-yuk reflects that he had tried to live an ordinary life like everyone else. Ji-yuk smiles and muses about money duplicating itself. Since the mysterious missions began, he has completed many tasks that resulted in accumulating a significant amount of money. In just 3 days, he managed to make 580 million won. Standing on the building's roof, he laughs about his newfound wealth, realizing he is now rich. Suddenly, Jiyuk spots a drone in the sky. The drone drops a box for him, and a voice announces that P099 has passed the test. Jiyuk opens the box and finds a loan ticket inside. The voice continues, stating that test passers will proceed to the main mission. Jiyuk's upcoming mission is to gather 1 billion won within 7 days. Confused, Jiyuk listens as the voice explains that if a participant cannot gather 1 billion won within the period, they cannot proceed to the next stage and all the money will be reset. Jiyuk returns to his office and sits in a chair, contemplating how to gather 1 billion won in 7 days. He checks his bank balance and sees he is short of 420 million won. He holds the loan ticket and ponders its significance. Flipping the ticket, he reads the instructions, which indicate that the ticket allows a loan of 100 million per use. Jiyuk realizes that he has too little information and no clear understanding of the mission. He also wonders about the origin of the glasses, questioning if they were made by the company. Suddenly, he notices Manager Choi, whose entire body is shaking. Jiyuk calls out to him. Manager Choi, filled with fear, wonders if it is too late to pretend he did not hear. He has been avoiding Jiyuk these days. Jiyuk approaches Manager Choi and whispers in his ear that he has a question. Manager Choi, terrified, tries to scream, but Jiyuk covers his mouth and demands that he just answer his question. Jiyuk asks if Manager Choi knows if the glasses were custom-made by the company. Manager Choi, shaking his head, indicates he doesn't know. Jiyuk, skeptical, activates a lie detector, causing Manager Choi to become even more frightened. Manager Choi, clasping his hands, insists that he truly doesn't know. Judging by his response, Jiyuk believes he is not lying. Jiyuk then asks if he has ever seen similar glasses at the company. Manager Choi replies no. Jiyuk concludes that he has been tricked into thinking the glasses were provided by the company. He then receives a notification on his glasses and gives a creepy smile, deciding that he should leave work early today. The notification indicates that the game begins in 30 minutes nearby. Jiyuk leaves the office, telling Manager Choi that he has something to take care of, and instructs him to handle everything that is left. When Manager Choi mentions he has plans, Jiyuk retorts that if he doesn't want to get chopped, he should work overtime. The scene shifts to a construction site where the game will begin. Jiyuk arrives and wonders if this is the place indicated on his glasses. His glasses indicate that a contest among participants will begin, and Jiyuk is unaware that others will join the game. The objective is for the person holding the money bag to retain it until the end to win. Jiyuk sees a bag in front of him, walks closer, and wonders if this is what they are talking about. He opens the bag and finds it filled with cash, surprised at how blatantly it was placed there. Suddenly, the game rules appear on his glasses. A participant holding the money bag who gets it stolen loses an amount equal to the amount in the bag, and the remaining time is 10 minutes. Seeing this, Jiyuk becomes happy and thinks that if he keeps it for 10 minutes, he will get 300 million won. The game countdown starts. Jiyuk holds the bag, gives a weird facial expression, and says he will have to defend it with his life. Suddenly, 3 guys with weapons approach. One of them tells Jiyuk that he shouldn't grab the bag so soon. A blonde-haired guy says Jiyuk is a newbie playing the game for the first time. Another guy wearing a wool hat says Jiyuk is going to have a good experience. They don't want to receive a murder penalty, so they tell him to calmly leave the bag and go. Jiyuk, confused, realizes they are participants too and says he has no intention of leaving the bag, challenging them to try to steal it. The 3 guys laugh at what Jiyuk just said. The blonde-haired guy asks if Jiyuk understands the situation. Jiyuk replies that there's nothing to understand and suddenly gives a creepy smile, saying he just has to beat them. One of the guys says Jiyuk has lost his mind because of greed for money. The guy with a baseball bat asks if Jiyuk knows who they are. Jiyuk retorts, asking who they are and if they know who he is. Hearing this, the guy with the baseball bat runs toward him and tries to hit him, but Jiyuk uses the bag as a shield and stops the attack. Jiyuk slaps the guy's face with such intensity that he falls, surprising the other 2. Jiyuk says that if all the participants are at this level, it might be easier than he thought. The other two guys split up and go to opposite sides. Juyuk remarks that they seem to have some sort of teamwork. They both run toward him, threatening to see if his mouth runs even after being stabbed. Juyuk kicks the ground hard, causing dust to fly and temporarily blind one of them. On the other side, the blonde guy runs toward him and tries to stab him, but Juyuk dodges and stops all attacks. Juyuk responds that this is not how to use a dagger. Frustrated, the guy uses all his energy to attack Juyuk, thinking he successfully stabbed him. However, Juyuk blocks the attack with the bag handle and cuts the knife into 2 pieces. Confused, the guy is then knocked down by Juyuk with the bag. Juyuk tells them he is an ordinary Special Forces veteran. He sees the guy who was temporarily blinded standing up and says he has a question. The guy asks what it is. Juyuk asks if he knows who is running the game. The guy replies that he doesn't know. He shows a handband and says he just received the device and participated. After some time, a bunch of other guys arrive. Seeing this, Juyuk smiles and says, "Now that things have turned out like this, come at me, all of you." He then gives a creepy smile and adds that it doesn't even matter. It has been a while since he got the chance to warm up. All the participants, driven by the prospect of winning 300 million won, rush toward him, saying they need to defeat him. Seeing this, Juyuk taunts them, saying, "You want to catch me?" He then strikes each participant who comes closer with the bag. Each hit causes the participant to lose 300 million won. Observing this, the other participants who are not attacking become afraid, realizing that getting hit by the bag even once means losing 300 million won. Juyuk taunts them, asking why they are not coming. One of them replies that the risk is too great. Juyuk then asks if he should come to them and begins walking toward them. One participant yells, "Don't come any closer. Throw something and stop him." A bunch of participants lift some rocks, thinking that if they attack from a distance, they will win. However, all the rocks thrown at Juyuk are stopped by the bag. Seeing this, one participant exclaims that it doesn't work, and Juyuk smashes his head with the bag, causing him to lose 300 million won and go bankrupt. Witnessing this, all the participants become even more afraid, and 2 masked guys are confused. Juyuk asks who wants to get hit for 300 million won. One participant replies that he is not going to do that and decides to give up. Another participant points out that giving up means a 100 million won loss, but it is still better than getting hit and losing 300 million won and going bankrupt. Some participants run away, while some remain. Juyuk then addresses those still there, saying they are going to do it until the end. One of them states that they have nowhere to go back to anyway, and another mentions having a 900 million won debt. Juyuk tells them to shut up and bring it on. They all attack him simultaneously, but he manages to beat all of them. A drone is continuously watching him. The guy with the mask looks a little afraid. Juyuk comments that his clothes are messed up now. The game timer stops at 0, and Juyuk still has the bag in his hand. A message shown in his goggles indicates that the mission is accomplished and he has acquired 300 million won. Juyuk smiles and says he can buy new clothes. Another notification appears, stating that the owner of the money bag has been decided and all participants are requested to disband. Juyuk leaves with the money bag, leaving the participants in bloodshed behind. After he is gone, a girl standing against a wall says, "That participant won't be able to last long. Don't you think so, mister?" A man in the shadows behind her replies that although Juyuk is pretty special, he draws too much attention and has no idea how dangerous that is. In the next scene, Juyuk reflected on how every day used to be the same. A daily life of working without knowing what to live for, always returning to a dark, empty house, and passing out from exhaustion. However, today was different. He was staying in the Sigrel Hotel, where the bill for one night in a 20 million won suite room was extravagant. The money he would normally need decades to earn, he had made in just 4 days. Sitting in his hotel room, he thought about how exciting it was. His account balance was 580 million won, and he had 300 million won in cash. He punched the table, wondering if this was truly living. Suddenly, someone entered his room. It was a girl from room service. She informed him that this was the room service he had requested and brought a special A++ beef steak cooked by a Michelin 3-star chef. Juyuk lifted a piece of food with a fork and put it in his mouth, his expression showing surprise. The room service girl asked him how it was and if it was to his liking. Juyuk smiled and said it was delicious. The room service girl then removed her wig, revealing her identity as the girl seen earlier. She questioned Juyuk's recklessness and whether he wasn't nervous at all. Juyuk greeted her, and she was surprised by his reaction. She inquired if he was a participant and how he could be so careless. Juyuk revealed that he knew from the beginning that she had been following him since the construction site. He turned his face in another direction and asked if she was accompanied by someone, revealing a man in the shadows. The man remarked that Juyuk had allowed them to follow him despite knowing everything. Juyuk responded that he didn't know why they followed him, but they didn't seem dangerous. As he continued eating his food, he mentioned that he needed someone to ask about the missions anyway and that he had a lot of questions. The man accused Juyuk of trying to extract information from him. Juyuk replied that it was something like that. The man smiled and said he also wanted to ask Juyuk something. They all sat at the same table, and the man first asked Juyuk how he got involved in the missions. Juyuk replied that, just like them, he participated in the missions after receiving a device and had done a test mission too. The man, curious, asked why there was no device on Juyuk's wrist. Juyuk responded that there wasn't a rule stating the device had to be on his wrist and wondered if there was any need to tell them about his glasses. The girl was surprised and asked if the device was on Juyuk's ankle, suggesting he might be familiar with electronic anklets. Juyuk said it was his turn to ask a question and inquired if the man knew how to remove the device. The man asked Juyuk how much he would price his freedom. Juyuk, puzzled, asked what he was talking about. The man replied that 2 billion won was the price set for freedom and explained that until they paid those people 2 billion won, the device would never come off. Juyuk asked if those people were the operators. The man confirmed, calling them the ones who created that hell and the actual rulers of the dark web. He added that rumors said they were holding tens of billions of dollars in illicit funds. In the hell they created, participants struggled with missions and games, fell into debt with loan tickets, went bankrupt, and eventually got dragged somewhere from which no one had returned. Juyuk asked why the man was telling him all this. The man explained that he needed to find out what kind of person Juyuk was. He asked Juyuk if freedom or money was more important to him. Juyuk replied that it was an obvious question and smiled, saying he could just buy his freedom after making 2 billion won. The man realized that money seemed more important to Juyuk and asked if he was confident he could win any mission. The man pressed his finger on his device and suggested they play a simple game. A notification appeared on Juyuk's glasses that P002 was requesting a private random game and asked if he would accept. Juyuk, thinking it might be a test, accepted the challenge since he wasn't one to avoid a match. His goggles notified him to confirm his opponent's information. Confused, he realized it was one of the functions of his glasses. He saw that his opponent, Gu-Woon Mo, was ranked third among all participants, with a record of 14 wins and only 1 loss, and assets totaling 4.8 billion won. Juyuk felt slightly afraid of this information. Another warning appeared that the match was starting and he couldn't give up. Woon Mo was excited, looking forward to seeing what kind of game it would be. Juyuk thought that once it started, he couldn't stop halfway. He said to hold on, but Woon Mo replied it was too late as the roulette had already started. A random game appeared on the screen, revealing it was a double dice game. The rules were simple. The player with the highest final dice score wins. The first rule stated that if the 2 dice did not match, the higher number of pips would be counted towards the player's score. The second rule was that if the pips of the dice were the same, they would be multiplied and counted as the player's score. Additionally, if one dice rolled a 1 and the other a 6, the player would automatically win. The girl opened a case, revealing many chips inside. She explained that each chip was worth 10 million won, and that both players would start with 88 chips based on their assets. Woon Mo remarked that it was great the game was so simple. The white dice would be rolled and revealed simultaneously, while the black dice could be revealed by lifting the cup after betting. Juyuk wondered aloud if this was a game of luck. Woon Mo confirmed this but asked, considering how calm Juyuk was, if he was confident in his luck. Juyuk screamed inside his mind that his life epitomized bad luck. As a child, he never got an answer right by rolling a pencil, and he never won a lottery number. He had never benefited from luck in his life, but somehow he ended up with all that fortune, making 880 million won in just 3 days. He thought that if it was his current self, he could turn this crisis into an opportunity. Suddenly, he punched the table and threw the dice, rolling a 1. Jiuk was surprised and wondered what Woon Mo's number was. Woon Mo had rolled a 2 on his white dice. Jiuk thought it wasn't over yet, as it depended on the second dice in the cup. Woon Mo then bet 100 million won. Jiuk was astonished that Woon Mo was betting 100 million won with that hand. He had no choice. If he gave up the game, he would lose all his possessions. He also bet 100 million won. The girl then revealed the second dice. Woon Mo had rolled a 3 on his black dice, making his higher number of dice a 3, giving him 3 points. Jiuk was slightly happy as it was lower than he thought, and he could win with a 4, 5, or 6. The girl revealed Jiuk's black dice, and he got 1, losing 100 million won. Jiuk was surprised and thought that since he got rid of his bad luck in the first round, things would be different from the second round. However, they played many rounds and Jiuk lost back-to-back, losing 500 million won. In the final round, the girls announced they would start. They both rolled their dice, and Jiuk got a 6, while Woon Mo got a 1. Jiuk was happy, thinking he finally got it. But suddenly, Woon Mo offered Jiuk a chance to win everything. Jiuk was confused and wondered if Woon Mo was out of his mind or confident he would get a 6. Jiuk had already checked, and there was no problem with the dice and cups. It was impossible to manipulate them. Jiuk bet everything. The girl revealed the second dice, and Woon Mo had rolled a 6. Jiuk thought that if he knew what kind of person Woon Mo was, he would never have accepted the game. A legendary gambler, while Jiuk was simply his prey. Jiuk lost everything, all 880 million won, with tears in his eyes. Woon Mo stood up and remarked that it had been fun and suggested they meet again. He handed Jiuk a card, saying that if Jiuk found something more important than money, he should come find him. The next day, a dinner was held at a restaurant where all the company staff were present. They all sat at the same table, and someone commented that it had been a while since they had a get-together. The employees cheered, clinking their drinks and expressing their thanks. Manager Choi noticed Jiuk drinking incrementally and angrily, his face showing clear signs of anger. Choi wondered why Jiuk had been frowning since he arrived at work that morning and why he was still acting that way at the company dinner. Suddenly, Jiuk lifted his head, and Manager Choi quickly looked away, thinking that he didn't know what had happened but would beat up anyone who messed with him. At that moment, someone appeared in front of Jiuk, asked his name, and added that it was a company dinner, but he didn't look good, asking if there was a problem at work. Jiuk's glasses indicated that the person was President Baek Deok-man, ignoring the president. Jiuk continued drinking. Manager Choi, worried about the situation, stood up to explain, but the president stopped him and suggested to Jiuk that they go outside for a bit. They both left the table. A female employee commented that Jiuk was acting pretty strange. Another male employee noted that since the president had been drinking, it looked like they might have to go home early. A female employee sitting near Suyin mentioned she heard something went wrong with Jiuk's investment, judging by his expression. Suyin reassured them that everything should be fine as the president wasn't drunk yet. Another girl added that the president was a nice person when he wasn't drunk. In the next scene, we see the president outside a restaurant, grabbing Jiuk by the tie and asking him about a place they could go to have some fun. The president tells Jiuk that he doesn't understand what went wrong with his generation, wondering aloud how Jiuk could lack both ambition and sensibility. The president tolerates him, saying the reason Jiuk will never amount to anything is because he only earns 30 million won a year, all while prioritizing a work-life balance. He tells Jiuk that someone like him can be replaced at any time. Jiuk, deep in thought, wonders how his 800 million won would be so hard to earn, even if he worked for decades. He asks himself if he really has to work his whole life under people who insult him all the time. The president, drunk and belligerent, suddenly slaps Jiuk and demands to know why he's just listening to him. The president offers Jiuk 100,000 won for every time he slaps him. Inside, Jiuk is furious, thinking that he'll break the president's arm if he slaps him one more time. But then, suddenly, a screen appears, and a new mission is revealed. Seeing the mission, Juyuk changes his mind, choosing to endure the slaps. His face suddenly shifts, and he acts happy, telling the president that he was finally able to open his eyes and thanks him. He grabs the president's hand and asks him to teach him another lesson. Seeing Juyuk's strange behavior, the president smiles, puts his hand on Juyuk's shoulder, and leaves the restaurant with him. The mission revealed was to kidnap the president, with a reward of 500%, which explains Juyuk's sudden change in behavior. He takes the president to an unknown place. In the next scene, the president wakes up, tied to a chair, looking up to see Juyuk. Realizing he has been kidnapped, the president starts to panic. Juyuk's task was to lock the president up for 24 hours in the designated area, and only 16 hours remain. The president, now agitated, asks Juyuk what he's doing and insists that this isn't a joke. Juyuk reminds him that the president kept saying he didn't want to go home and dragged employees around until 4 in the morning, causing all kinds of scenes. Juyuk then pulls out the president's phone. The president, now furious, demands to be untied and to have his phone returned. Juyuk casually scrolls through it, mentioning that he took a little peek at the president's phone while he was passed out. He finds something strange. The president, growing angrier, screams at Juyuk to untie him, warning him that he won't be safe after this and that he'll go to jail. But Juyuk, unfazed, tells the president that he doesn't seem to understand the situation he's in at all. Juyuk then discovers nude photos of employees on the president's phone, showing them to him and stating that it will be the president, not him, who ends up in jail. It turns out the president had installed a camera in the company's bathroom. The president, shocked, wonders how Juyuk managed to unlock his phone. We can clearly see from the reflection in Juyuk's glasses that his reward from the kidnapping mission was a hacking skill, which made it easy for him to unlock the phone. Juyuk threatens the president, saying that if he hands the phone over to the police, things will get very interesting. He then finds a folder on the phone named List, which contains the president's perverted files, including a female employee sponsor rejection list. Seeing this, Juyuk grows even angrier and asks the president what he thinks of the company's employees. The president, smiling, replies that dogs must obey their master, claiming the employees don't even know their place and are acting haughty. He adds that the women on the list can't make it far in life and will have to crawl on the bottom just like Juyuk. He says he was simply giving them a chance. Hearing this, Juyuk, seething with anger, tells the president that he's the worst and that no one will be able to save him. The president retorts that Juyuk is committing a crime by threatening him, but Juyuk quickly grabs the president by the mouth, silencing him. He mocks the president, offering him 100,000 won for every slap, telling him to just be thankful and take it. Juyuk then raises his hand and slaps the president with full force, causing him to fall to the ground along with the chair he was tied to. Juyuk, standing over him, asks if the president really thinks he can live like that just because he has a little money. He picks the president back up, and the president, now frightened, asks what Juyuk wants from him. Juyuk replies that he doesn't know, but that living a normal life is hard too. Working, earning money, and living a happy life is already so difficult, but guys like the president keep getting in the way. He slaps the president again, asking if it was fun for him to trample on normal people, to look down on them from above. The president, terrified, asks once more what Juyuk wants from him. Juyuk, with a strange aura, tells him that he only wants one thing, for the president to feel that same sense of unfairness just once. The president's body trembles, and suddenly he notices a man with a knife standing behind Juyuk. But it's not just one man. There are two of them, and they appear to be coming to rescue the president. There was a device on their wrists, and they were also participants. Seeing them, the president screamed for help. One of the men said they were aware of the situation, which is why they had come. Their mission was to rescue the kidnapped civilian, with a reward of 200 million won. They both told Juyuk that it was nothing personal. They just had a mission to complete. But Juyuk smiled, raised his hand, and calmly said that he already knew that. The two participants were puzzled, wondering why Juyuk was so calm, as something about him didn't feel right. One asked the other what they should do next, but suddenly, one of them was kicked away, flying far and crashing to the ground, with a cloud of dust rising in the air. After the dust settled, it was revealed that Juyuk had kicked him. He then swiftly attacked the other participant, knocking him out in just 2 seconds. Soon after, several more participants arrived, but what the president witnessed each time was the overwhelming difference in their abilities. Juyuk easily defeated every participant who came to rescue the president. Seeing an opportunity, the president thought about escaping, but suddenly, the rope binding him was cut with a knife. The president was shocked to see that it was Juyuk who had cut the rope with the chair. Juyuk said that the president looked bored, which is why he came over, and now they had to negotiate his salary. Juyuk demanded that his salary be 5 times what it currently was and that his position be changed to allow him to earn a lot while doing minimal work. After that, Juyuk came closer to the president, grabbed his head, and told him that from now on the president would be his dog. In the next scene, we see a jailer in a prison calling out to prisoner number 3270, telling him to hang in there for another day, as he would soon be able to run wild to his heart's content. The jailer wore the same participant watch, and his mission was to help a first-degree felon and criminals escape from prison within 24 hours, with a reward of 500 million won. The prison housed some dangerous-looking criminals, and once the jailer succeeded in his mission, a punishment game would begin. In the following scene, we shift to a company building where something strange was happening. The employees gathered to see what was going on. Suddenly, Manager Choi entered the office and saw a crowd. Curious, he peeked inside, and to his shock, he saw Juyuk sitting in a golden chair behind an elaborate desk. Juyuk greeted everyone with a good morning and explained that, although it seemed sudden, his position had slightly changed by the president's order to a special one. Manager Choi was confused by Juyuk's sudden promotion and wondered what he had done to the president. Juyuk now had his own personal office. Juyuk, reflecting on the situation, realized that because of his glasses, his concept of money-making had completely changed. He had earned and lost money that would normally take a lifetime to save through the missions, but he earned it back with the ticket he received. Although he had earned 500 million won in just one day, he wasn't happy because he had only 4 hours left to earn 1 billion won, which was now his main mission. If he didn't make the 1 billion won within the time limit, all his earnings would reset. Juyuk was obsessed with making money and couldn't bear the thought of his account being reset. He no longer had the ticket, so he resolved that no matter what kind of mission or game lay ahead, he would do whatever it took to win. Meanwhile, back in the prison, the central control room was receiving reports about a prisoner escort van. They checked in with the van, asking for an update on the situation. The escort team reported that, along with the 10 prisoners being transported, the special surveillance target was secure and that there was nothing abnormal. Inside the van, one of the participants, the jailer, was sitting calmly. The central control reminded him to report immediately if anything went wrong. Suddenly, the jailer killed the van driver with a knife, then moved to the back where the prisoners were being held. He opened the gate, handed a set of keys to one of the prisoners, and told them that although they couldn't escape yet, once the game began, hackers would probably take control of the police's CCTVs and radios. He instructed the prisoners to run as far away as they could when the time came. All the prisoners were confused and wondered what kind of game was about to begin and why they were being released. The jailer, checking his watch, warned them that no matter where they went, they could never truly escape. The mission for other participants around the world was to hunt down the escaped criminals, and they would receive a bounty for successfully capturing them. On one side, there were the prisoners who needed their freedom, and on the other, participants who needed money. This game was becoming more interesting. A bunch of participants received a notification about their new mission. We see that prisoner No. 3270, who seemed to be the leader of the criminals, had a bounty of 500 million won. His lackeys asked him what they should do next. Prisoner number 3270 told one of them that he had buried the money underground and that they should head there first. His plan was to find the money and then contact a smuggling broker he knew so they could leave Korea as soon as possible. We see a surveillance drone watching the criminals and transmitting their exact location to other participants. Some participants observe their movements, and one remarks to the other that it would be better if the criminals went somewhere quiet. Another participant, armed with a crossbow, tells them to hurry before other participants arrive to hunt, since there are many preys. In the next scene, about an hour after the start of the punishment game, The crossbow-wielding participant reaches the area where the criminals are. He targets a criminal's leg with his bow, shooting him and causing the criminal to fall, bleeding from the leg. The crossbowman says that as long as they take them out one by one, the criminals won't be able to notice. Suddenly, he feels a hand on his shoulder. He turns around, expecting to see his teammate, but instead, it's a criminal smiling at him. The criminal says, "So, you've been secretly catching them one by one, huh?" before cutting off the arm of one of the crossbowman's crew. The criminal is prisoner number 2804 with a bounty of 300 million won. He presses a sickle against the participant's face and asks who he is, then suddenly cuts off one of his hands. He drags the participant to prisoner number 3270, informing him that he has dealt with the pests in the area, though one of their men was attacked while on lookout. Prisoner 3270 asks the crossbow participant how many people they've taken down, but quickly dismisses the answer. He grabs the participant's head, flips him over, and kills him. Prisoner 3270 remarks that it's not the criminals who are being hunted, it's the participants. In the background, we see many participants who had come to hunt the criminals, all killed. Prisoner 3270 yells at the remaining prisoners who are digging, ordering them to find the money quickly so they can leave Korea, or he will abandon anyone who doesn't. Prisoner 2804 reports to his boss that the people attacking them didn't look like gang members, and he's been trying to figure out who they are. Somehow, their information is displayed on their watches, showing bounties on their heads. Hearing this, Prisoner 3270 is pleased and asks how much his bounty is. Prisoner 2804 replies, 500 million won. Prisoner 3270 is thrilled, saying he always dreamed of having a bounty on his head, and now that dream has come true. Prisoner 2804, however, thinks his boss is foolish, as 5 of their men have already died. He then asks a fellow prisoner named Man-sik, who had been digging, how much money they found. Man-sik replies that they've uncovered 3 bundles, each worth 500 million won. Prisoner 2804 asks how many bundles are left, and Man-sik says 3 more. Prisoner 2804, with devilish thoughts, laughs to himself, realizing that 3 billion won is more than he expected, and all he has to do is take advantage of his boss to get it for himself. On the other side, we see someone watching them through binoculars. They are also participants, 3 in total, observing the prisoners as they dig. They wonder if they can grab the money for themselves since there's no way they'll just give it up. One participant, still confused, asks if they really have to hunt humans. Another grabs his collar and tells him, "They're not humans, they're criminals. Each one is worth 100 million won." One of them grabs a crossbow and suggests taking them out one by one from a distance. "The safest and most efficient way is to keep our distance and pick them off one at a time," he says. But suddenly, Juyuk appears out of nowhere behind them and screams. Startled, the participant with the crossbow quickly turns and points it at Juyuk. However, Juyuk calmly says there's no need to be on guard since he's just an ordinary office worker. He asks them if they are participants too and raises his weapon, saying he has a good plan for them. Juyuk then licks the edge of his weapon. One of the participants tells Juyuk they don't know who he is, but they don't want to be bait either. Another participant, irritated, tells Juyuk to get lost, warning him that if he doesn't leave by the count of 3, he'll shoot the crossbow. Juyuk tries to explain that he's offering them a good method to catch the criminals, but the participant continues counting. At the count of 3, he fires the crossbow, but Juyuk effortlessly deflects the arrow in midair with his weapon. All the participants are shocked as Juyuk cuts the crossbow in 2. He calls them amateurs and tells them to listen to him while he's still being nice. The 3 participants, realizing they have no chance against him, lower their weapons, surrender, and agree to listen to Juyuk's plan. After some time at a warehouse, a group of prisoners is digging and wondering where Man-sik had buried the money. Suddenly, one of them notices 3 men approaching and realizes they are participants, evident from the watches they are wearing. Seeing the participants, one of the prisoners grabs his weapon, thinking about burying them after killing them. The 3 participants immediately start running. Prisoner number 2804 notices this and orders all the prisoners to catch them. The participants flee into the woods, with the prisoners chasing them armed. Juyuk instructs the participants to lead the prisoners to a specific location. All three participants arrive at an abandoned house, where Juyuk had told them to go. But upon arriving, they wonder where Juyuk has gone. From behind, the prisoners arrive as well, confident in their numbers, certain they can kill the three participants. One prisoner charges toward them with a digging spade, intending to attack. Their plan is to bury them after killing them. However, suddenly, someone throws an axe at the prisoner, stopping the attack. The prisoner, shocked, wonders who threw it, and we see Juyuk standing with a lighter. He throws the lighter onto the grass, causing a fire to surround the prisoners. Juyuk stands on the roof of the house and announces that none of them can escape now, so they should stay still and let him beat them. The three participants are also confused, thinking Juyuk is stuck in the fire too. Juyuk then jumps down from the roof onto one of the prisoners, sending him flying and knocking him out. Seeing this, the rest of the prisoners become more aggressive and charge at Juyuk, but he dodges all their attacks one by one and counters with swift strikes. He grabs a knife from one prisoner and delivers several cuts across his body, paralyzing him instantly. One of the prisoners behind Juyuk, holding a knife, is terrified. Juyuk strikes him with one powerful blow, causing him to drop the knife. Juyuk then grabs his head and slams it into the ground. He beats all the prisoners while the three participants watch in shock, realizing that in this game, whenever Juyuk had to choose between money and his life, he always chose money. Now Juyuk is on the hunt. After defeating 4 criminals, he collects 400 million won in bounties. Soon after, prisoner number 2804 arrives and sees all the knocked out prisoners. He wonders who dared to play with fire here. Prisoner No. 2804 has a criminal record that includes murder, arson, and kidnapping, with a total of 18 cases and a bounty of 300 million won on his head. He approaches Juyuk with a knife and asks him if he was the one who captured all the prisoners. Juyuk asks in return if number 2804 is here to get revenge for them. Prisoner number 2804 walks over to a nearby prisoner who is still alive and stabs him in the throat, killing him. He tells Juyuk that he should have finished the job properly when he started it, and that he should have sent them on their way in peace. Prisoner number 2804 then moves toward Juyuk, taunting him and asking if he's ready to have holes in his body. Juyuk responds that he's already been stabbed a few times before, so he's used to it. As the prisoner nears Juyuk, he attempts to stab him with the knife, but Juyuk steps back, dodging the attack. The prisoner strikes again with his other hand, but Juyuk dodges that as well. The prisoner is holding 2 knives. Juyuk raises his hand and tells him to hold on for a second. He goes near the house, searching for a weapon, and comes back with 2 steel hooks. Juyuk says it's been a while since he's fought properly. The prisoner asks if Juyuk is serious about fighting, and Juyuk smiles, replying that he's familiar with a technique called the praying mantis form. In the next scene, we see a flashback of prisoner number 2804's past, where muscular men would immediately change their attitude when he pulled out his knife. Even those who dared him to stab them would get on their knees and beg for mercy. He used to enjoy stabbing people, but now, in the present fight with Juyuk, he feels something strange. Juyuk strikes him repeatedly with the hooks, pushing him back with each hit. The prisoner is confused, wondering what kind of attack this is. Pushed back, he becomes furious and drops his guard, lunging at Juyuk with his knife. But Juyuk smiles and easily dodges, laughing as though the danger doesn't bother him. The prisoner realizes why he feels so uneasy. Juyuk is treating him like a bug. Enraged, prisoner number 2804 attacks Juyuk with full power, but Juyuk remains unfazed, stabbing him multiple times with the hooks and knocking him down. Juyuk collects another 400 million won and remarks that only 1 prisoner remains. Juyuk walks into the jungle with the 3 participants, wondering where the last prisoner has gone. One of the participants asks if they can leave now, but Juyuk turns his head and replies that there's still 1 more criminal left. The participant informs Juyuk that this last guy is extremely dangerous. Before going to jail, he was infamous for killing 13 gangsters with his bare hands. He's also the one responsible for killing most of the participants. The 3 participants express their reluctance to face him, especially without weapons, feeling like they've already lost. Suddenly, one of them notices something strange behind Juyuk. The last prisoner is right behind him. The prisoner swings his fist at Juyuk, but Juyuk blocks the attack and counters with a punch to the jaw, though it has no effect. Juyuk then grabs the prisoner's arm, punches him in the face, and kicks him in mid-air. The prisoner's mouth starts bleeding, and Juyuk thinks he can beat him. But the prisoner retaliates with a punch that's much stronger than before. Juyuk realizes that his hits aren't doing much, and the prisoner's strength is overwhelming. The prisoner tries to grab Juyuk, but Juyuk dodges, thinking that as long as he avoids being caught, he'll be safe. Juyuk studies the prisoner and notices that his grip is even stronger than anticipated. Suddenly, the prisoner jumps and catches Juyuk in a tight hold, squeezing him with immense force. The prisoner smiles, thinking that the weight difference between them gives him the upper hand. Juyuk's entire body shakes under the pressure, but then he smirks. He grabs the prisoner's mouth with one hand, showing superhuman strength. In extreme situations, humans can exhibit incredible power, and Juyuk is no exception. He says to the prisoner that while he's durable, he has to die now. Juyuk grabs the prisoner's neck and slams his head into the ground, knocking him out. Juyuk collects a 500 million won bounty, and the criminal hunt is complete. With the punishment game over, Juyuk has earned a total of 1.2 billion won. He comments that these fights remind him of his old days. On the other side, the three participants are still in shock that Juyuk managed to knock out the last prisoner single-handedly. One participant whispers something to another about the money the prisoners buried underground. They plan to take it since Juyuk doesn't know about it. They call Juyuk sir and tell him that he's worked hard and that they'll take care of the rest. Juyuk becomes suspicious of their sudden change in behavior. He thinks about it, but before he can act, a tranquilizer dart hits his neck, and the other three participants are also shot with tranquilizers. Juyuk, without wasting time, tried to scan the player who shot the tranquilizer. Suddenly, the man was revealed, and he was wearing a white mask that covered his entire face, preventing Juyuk from scanning him as access was denied. The masked man taunted Juyuk, noting that he was still standing even after being hit. Behind Juyuk, more masked men appeared, holding chains. Juyuk soon felt the effects of the tranquilizer and became paralyzed. The masked man approached him and said that things were only going to get better from now on and that he was looking forward to it. Meanwhile, a notification appeared on Juyuk's glasses showing that his current assets were 1.7 billion, and he had been registered in the ranking system. In the next scene, we see a fire bursting out in a jail-like place. A kid was trying to escape, and as he turned his head, he saw other kids trapped in cages, pleading with him, asking why he was running away by himself. Upon seeing this, Juyuk suddenly woke up in his room. That kid was him in the past. He wondered how he had gotten back home, as his memory was hazy after defeating the prisoner. Juyuk tried to recall the events and remembered the strange masked man, concluding that he was definitely connected to the organizers. Juyuk turned on the television and saw a news report about a fire that broke out on a convoy bus urgently transporting death row inmates. All of the inmates were believed to have died in the fire. Juyuk thought to himself that it was as if they left the news on to show him that they were cleaning up loose ends, as if it were nothing. He then checked his account and stats, relieved to find that nothing had happened to his money. When he checked the main mission, he saw that he had successfully completed it by collecting 1 billion in 7 days. Juyuk sighed in relief, happy that his money was safe and that the mission ended without any problems. As Juyuk rubbed the back of his neck, he suddenly felt something strange. A new mission notification appeared. Mission Bomb C-04 detected. He had to complete 5 chain missions to defuse the bomb that had been implanted in him. His first mission was to spend 30 minutes with a coworker. Why? Or else the bomb would detonate upon failure. In the office, Manager Choi was sipping coffee and wondering why he always had to buy coffee for Juyuk. Suddenly, he saw Juyuk rushing toward him, moving so fast that he knocked the coffee from Choi's hand, spilling it on the ground. Choi couldn't even say anything since Juyuk was a special employee at the company. Meanwhile, Yoo Soo-yeon was working at her desk when Juyuk suddenly approached her, greeting her with a good morning. Startled, Soo-yeon asked if something was wrong. Juyuk, wondering if Soo-yeon was the why he needed, quickly replied that he had an important job to do. At that moment, his first mission was cleared, and a second mission appeared. Stay within 3 meters of Y for 6 hours. Adapting his plan, Juyuk told Soo-yun that, due to his position change, he was now taking on more responsibilities and had been informed that she needed help due to her excessive workload. He suggested that, instead of working today, she should relax and talk to him about her worries. Manager Choi happened to be passing by, and Juyuk quickly suggested that Choi could take care of all of Soo-yun's work. Manager Choi, catching Juyuk's weird, knowing glance, reluctantly agreed, smiling despite his inner despair. Juyuk checked his phone and texted the president, informing him that he would be using the corporate credit card to cover all expenses for Soo-yun's break. Hearing this, Soo-yun became excited, eagerly thinking about how she would enjoy her day off. Juyuk reminded her that she had to spend the day with him. They went on a series of outings, including a picnic in the park, bowling, and a movie. Juyuk started to wonder if this was turning into a date. Later that night, Juyuk and Soo-yun went to a fine dining restaurant. Soo-yun commented on how much fun she had and how it felt even better than skipping classes in high school. She raised her glass and expressed her gratitude to Juyuk for giving her a break and taking care of her, even if it was work-related. As she started to say something to Juyuk, he suddenly put a dessert knife in his mouth, imitating a sea elephant. This odd behavior was due to a new mission appearing, make Y laugh within 1 minute. At first, Soo-yun was confused, but after a few moments, she burst out laughing, wondering what on earth he was doing. Juyuk's third mission was cleared. Juyuk thought to himself that these missions seemed easy, but suddenly a waiter approached them with what he said was a gift in appreciation for their visit. He opened a box containing a device similar to the ones all participants in the game had. Juyuk's next mission appeared: install the device on coworker Y and make her join the game. Juyuk was quite shocked to see the device, but Soo-yun casually thought it was just a smartwatch and asked the waiter if they were really giving it to them. Juyuk, suspicious, looked at the waiter and asked who he was. The waiter leaned in and quietly told Juyuk that they were being watched, and he needed to follow the order, or he would die. Juyuk realized he had made a mistake, thinking he could keep Soo-yun from getting involved. Soo-yun, noticing his reaction, asked if something was wrong. Still in shock, Juyuk thought about how the game was a dilemma that put human lives on the line. He quickly responded that everything was fine, concealing his true thoughts. Later, at the hotel, Soo-yun fell asleep, and Juyuk sat beside her, holding the watch. He realized she was defenseless, and if he placed the device on her wrist while she slept, the task would be complete. He rationalized that in this world, money was the only thing he could trust, and his own life was more important than anyone else's. Yet, for some reason, he hesitated. Suddenly, a voice emerged from Juyuk's glasses, telling him that it was okay and reassuring him that no one would find out. The voice knew his name and referred to him as P099, his participant code. It mocked Juyuk, saying he was someone who would do anything to survive and didn't need to pretend otherwise. The voice knew everything about him. Juyuk wondered if it was the voice of the masked man. The voice continued, saying Juyuk was special, but in the end, he was just one of many participants, just another human driven by capitalism. It claimed that controlling humans was easy because they were the most selfish creatures. A screen appeared in front of Juyuk, giving him a choice: make Soo-yun participate in the game or face an explosion. Seeing this, Juyuk smiled and spoke back to the voice, acknowledging that while the voice might know everything about him, it wouldn't be easy to control him. He punched the wall in frustration, saying that the voice seriously angered him, and when he was angry, he was the type to turn everything upside down. Juyuk then picked up a knife. The voice asked if he thought that was a solution. Juyuk, unfazed, replied, "Who knows?" With that, Juyuk used the knife to cut the bomb out from the back of his neck. He told the voice he wouldn't be manipulated by money and that it was him, Juyuk, who was using the organizers to make money. The voice, intrigued, said, "Let's see how far you can go." Suddenly, a final mission appeared on Juyuk's screen. Drones began to approach the building where Juyuk and Soo-yun were staying, and they opened fire on it. The mission informed Juyuk that 5 people were currently in the neighboring villa. He had a choice: either save the 5 lives or save Soo-yun, who now had a bounty of 300 million on her head. Many participants received notifications about the bounty, and the voice commented that things were about to get fun. It added that this was a common dilemma, but now that Juyuk was experiencing it firsthand, it felt a bit different. The voice urged him to think carefully and make his decision. Juyuk considered calling 119 for help, but his phone had been hacked, and no calls could be made. The organizers had control over the signal in the area, and there would be no help from the fire department or police. He would have to save them himself. Taking a deep breath, Juyuk screamed as loudly as he could, warning everyone that a fire had broken out. The sound woke Soo-yeon, who, confused, asked where the fire was. Without wasting time, Juyuk wrapped her in a blanket, lifted her onto his shoulder, and carried her outside the building. Once outside, he gently set her down and removed the blanket. A crowd had gathered, watching the scene unfold. Juyuk told Soo-yeon to stay covered with the blanket and wait for him. He would be back soon. Soo-yeon asked if he was really going back into the burning building. Juyuk replied that when he was younger, there had been a fire in his home, but at the time, he had been powerless and scared. After that day, he made a vow never to give up on innocent people. With that, Juyuk ran back into the burning building. The crowd watched in disbelief, some calling Juyuk crazy. People muttered how lucky they were that it wasn't their house on fire. They assumed the fire trucks would arrive soon. Many stood there filming the scene on their phones, choosing to capture the suffering of others rather than intervene. After some time, through the thick smoke, Juyuk emerged, carrying 4 people at once, a feat that seemed impossible to the onlookers. He told Soo-yeon to look after the people he had saved, assuring her he would be back. Soo-yeon, confused, asked where he was going. Juyuk explained there was still one person left to save. At that moment, Juyuk's screen alerted him that a participant was closing in on Soo-yeon, within 5 meters, and would reach her in 1 minute. The voice reminded Juyuk that if he went back into the fire, Soo-yeon would likely be in danger. Juyuk hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, but after a few seconds, he sprinted back into the burning building, determined to save the last person in under a minute. He climbed the stairs quickly and reached the floor where the fire was raging. He spotted an unconscious man lying on the floor in one of the rooms. The voice, growing impatient, taunted Juyuk, reminding him that he had broken the rules and made a choice not listed in the options. The organizers threatened to deduct $1 billion from his account if he saved the man. The voice asked Juyuk if he would still save the man or leave him to die in exchange for $1 billion. On the other side, outside, Soo-yeon was wondering why Juyuk hadn't come out yet. A man approached her from behind and asked if she was the person living in Haru Villa, number 204. Soo-yeon asked him if he knew her or not. The man, who was a participant, smiled and said he had missed her so much. He then grabbed Soo-yeon's hand, pulled out a knife, and threatened her to come with him. Suddenly, someone jumped off a car behind the participant. The participant turned to look and saw it was Juyuk, carrying another person on his shoulder. Juyuk told the participant to put the knife down and warned him that if he touched her, he was dead. The participant, confused, wondered if Juyuk was also a participant and had come to steal his 300 million bounty. The participant then lifted the knife and tried to strike Soo-yeon, but Juyuk threw his shoe at him, hitting the participant's hand and stopping the attack. Soo-yeon's body was trembling. She was terrified and sitting on the ground. Juyuk ran toward her to protect her, but the participant mocked that it was too late to save her. The participant then tried to stab her again, but Juyuk threw himself in between them. The knife pierced Juyuk's left side, and he started bleeding. However, Juyuk managed to grab the knife, preventing it from going deeper. He looked at the participant angrily and warned him again that if he touched her, he was dead. The participant, seeing Juyuk as just another contestant, offered to split the reward money in half, but Juyuk raised his head and headbutted the participant with full force, knocking him unconscious. Juyuk, having inhaled too much smoke, suddenly collapsed and became unconscious as well. Soo-yeon rushed to his side, trying to wake him up. Just then, someone approached. He was the 31st ranked participant, Jin Young-cheol. He was on the phone, reporting that he had found Juyuk and asked the caller if he should bring Juyuk with them or take care of him. In the next scene, Jiyuk suddenly woke up in an unfamiliar place and heard a child's voice. He saw a man approaching a young boy, and the boy was pleading for him to stay away. The boy screamed for help. The man approaching the boy was Jung Cheol, and he told the boy to shut up and stay still. Jung Cheol then noticed Jiyuk was nearby and tried to punch him. Jiyuk pushed him away, telling him to stay away from the kid. Another man was in the room, sitting on a chair with a gun pointed at Jiyuk. This man was a ranker Jiyuk had encountered before, someone who had beaten him in a previous game. The older man told Jiyuk that acting recklessly without thinking things through was no different from digging his own grave. Jiyuk glanced at the terrified boy and noticed the child was wearing a device on his wrist. He wondered if these two men were exploiting children. The older man said it was none of Jiyuk's business. Jiyuk demanded to know why they wouldn't let the boy go. The old man replied that Jiyuk was willing to save a child he had never seen before, immediately after waking up in an unknown place. He asked Jiyuk why he was willing to go that far. Jiyuk answered that the child had asked for help, and no matter how he looked at it, the two men appeared to be criminals. The old man smiled and pointed the gun at Jiyuk again, saying that if Jiyuk thought they looked like criminals, then maybe they were. Jiyuk, without hesitation, stepped in front of the boy to shield him. The old man pulled the trigger, but it turned out to be a water gun, spraying water in Jiyuk's face. The boy behind him burst out laughing. Jiyuk, furious, grabbed the boy by his collar. The boy teased Jiyuk, saying he had fallen for his acting. Jiyuk lifted the boy up by the collar, clearly angry, and asked him if he was on their side. Jiyuk told the boy that he was going to teach him a lesson about life. He swung the boy into the air, and the boy quickly begged him to speak to the older man. The old man told Jiyuk to calm down and promised to explain everything. Jung Cheol then approached the old man and remarked that Jiyuk seemed better than he had expected. Jiyuk put the boy down and demanded to know who they were. The old man apologized for tricking him, explaining that they were just conducting a small test. He said the child was under their protection and that they were part of the participant liberation group. Jiyuk sat at the table with the old man, who began to explain that there was much to discuss. First, he mentioned that Jiyuk's co-worker, who had been with him last night, was now safely in the hospital. However, due to the shock, she couldn't remember what had happened. The person who saved Jiyuk after he had passed out, along with his co-worker, was that friend over there. Jiyuk realized, judging by the circumstances, that the man was telling the truth. He thanked the old man for saving him, though he didn't believe the man had saved him without reason. The old man explained that the reason for saving Jiyuk was that Jiyuk had already become a ranker, and at this rate, his assets would soon exceed 2 billion won. Jiyuk's current assets were displayed, 1.7 billion won, with a rank of 91. The old man warned him that as he earned more money and his rank increased, he would likely become a target for other forces or rankers. He pointed out that what had happened the previous night, when Suyun was in danger, was proof of that. The old man then made a proposal. He offered Jiyuk a chance to join the liberation group. If Jiyuk accepted, the 800 million won the old man had taken from him would be returned. In return, the old man would trust that Jiyuk would act in line with their shared purpose. However, there was another offer on the table. The old man said he would give Jiyuk 400 million won if he participated in a team game with a member of the liberation group, with another 400 million won to be paid later. Since it didn't seem like Jiyuk was going to stop playing the game anytime soon, the proposal was quite appealing. The old man said he would send the time and location later and asked Jiyuk to think about the offer carefully. Late at night, Jiyuk was sitting at the dining table, reflecting on how surreal it felt to have 1.7 billion won in his account, with even more rewards still to come. He checked his status and claimed a new reward, which turned out to be a random box that would be delivered by a drone to his location when used. He also received a message from the organizers informing him that there wouldn't be any personal missions directly involving him for a while. Upon reading this, Jiyuk wondered whether he should be relieved that he got through everything safely. After all that had happened the day before, one thing was clear to Jiyuk: the money could disappear at any time. However, it was impossible to withdraw large amounts of cash due to the system's control. This realization made him decide that before the money disappeared, he had to experience the pleasures of wealth. The chef served him sushi, and he ate it. The single meal cost 400,000 won. The sushi was so delicious that it melted in his mouth. Juyuk had only ever seen such food on TV before, but now he was eating it himself. In the bleak reality he'd known, he desperately wanted to make his life easier, and now it finally was. Juyuk decided that from now on, he would enjoy life to the fullest. For days later, at a game location, many participants had gathered, and Juyuk entered the area. He thought to himself that after the game, he should look for an apartment with a view of the Han River. Someone called out to him, saying that he was late. Juyuk turned around and saw that it was his game partner, the same boy from before. Juyuk remembered that the boy had been sent to take care of him. He wondered why the Liberation Group had paired him with this boy for the game. Juyuk asked the boy how old he was, and the boy replied that he was 15. Juyuk thought to himself that the old man really expected him to clear the team game with a middle school student. Seeing a child in Juyuk's team, all the other participants immediately thought they would target their team first. The game began automatically once the maximum number of participants had gathered in the game zone. Juyuk realized that the old man had tricked him, and he had expected Jung Cheol to be his partner instead. The boy, noticing Juyuk's confusion, remarked that Jung Cheol would have been more reliable and even called Juyuk weak. The boy then commented on Juyuk's appearance, calling him ugly. Juyuk, irritated, responded that he didn't like the boy either. The boy, visibly shaking, admitted that they absolutely had to win this time. Juyuk placed his hand on the boy's face and told him to believe in him and follow his lead, assuring the boy that he was strong enough to protect him. The participants gathered on the ground, and the game was announced, Protect the King. There were 4 teams, each with a randomly chosen king. The objective was to protect the king, and the game would end when 2 teams were eliminated. If a king surrendered or became incapacitated, their team would lose. A crown symbol appeared on the boy's watch, signifying that he was their king. The boy turned to Juyuk and asked what they should do. Juyuk thought that if he were the king, he could do whatever he wanted. However, in this game, he couldn't make any rash moves. The game started after a 3-second countdown. Juyuk and the boy were immediately surrounded by numerous participants, clearly ganging up on their team. As the countdown ended, all the participants rushed toward the boy. Juyuk quickly lifted him onto his shoulder. One participant mocked Juyuk, saying that if he openly protected the boy like that, it would expose him as the king right away. All the participants laughed at Juyuk for revealing that the boy was their king, thinking they could easily gang up on them. But Juyuk suddenly started stumbling around. The boy, panicking, swung his arms and asked what he should do. Juyuk calmly told him to stay still for a moment. One of the teams decided to target Juyuk's team first, but then noticed another team with identical-looking members, all with green hair, staring at them. They decided to go after the green-haired team instead. Juyuk thought that, luckily, they had turned their attention elsewhere. Now, while the other teams were keeping each other in check, he needed to sort things out quickly. However, 2 participants from another team suddenly charged at them, aiming to pull down their king. Juyuk grabbed the boy's leg and told him to put some strength in it and stand up. The boy, scared and confused, didn't know what was happening. Suddenly, Juyuk threw the boy into the air, and in the same motion, kicked the 2 participants at once. The boy landed safely in Juyuk's arms, and Juyuk placed him back on the ground. He instructed the boy to stay there and assured him he would return after dealing with the others. But suddenly, the boy was shocked by what he saw behind Juyuk. Juyuk turned around and witnessed a gruesome scene. 2 of the green-haired participants were brutally attacking another contestant. One of them crushed the contestant's eye, while the other spat something out of his mouth. It was someone's nose. The other participant's nose had been sliced off. Then, the green-haired participant kneed the injured contestant in the head, knocking him down. Both green-haired participants exuded an aura of extreme cruelty. The announcement began, stating that the first game was over and the second game would start in 10 seconds. It was to be held in the gym. Both teams arrived to see their opponents. Juyuk asked a boy if he really had to participate in the game. The boy replied that he had been told earlier that he absolutely had to clear that time. Juyuk wondered why the kid had to go so far. Suddenly, A door opened, and a host of the game, a masked man calling himself a puppet, appeared. He congratulated both teams on clearing the first game. They had finished faster than he had expected. The host then went to the big screen and revealed the second game. The second game was called 2:2 Random Card 1 Touch. The rules were that, for each turn, each team received a body part card. During their attack turn, they had to attack the body part shown on the card. The opponent would receive an attack on the body part shown on their card in terms of defense, and the opponent could not move in advance. The rule of Protect the King was maintained until only one team was left. In addition, the king could give orders to the members of his team. In other words, the king could order his team members to take the hit in his place. The king's words were absolute, and if a team member broke this rule, they would be deemed to have broken the rules and would be eliminated immediately. The game began, and Juyuk thought that it was too dangerous with this type of opponent. He suggested to the boy that they should stop right now, but the boy replied that there was no need to do that. Juyuk asked if the boy had some kind of plan. The boy looked at him and saw that Juyuk was a king and could do anything he wanted. Juyuk wondered if this meant the boy could order him to take a hit in his place. The boy was shaking and said that if winning required that, then that was what he was going to do. Hearing this, Juyuk raised his hand, and the boy thought he was about to be hit. Instead, Juyuk placed a hand on the boy's head and said that he didn't know what kind of burden a young kid like him was carrying. Juyuk asked why the boy looked as if the world had collapsed. In the past, we see that the boy's father had run away because of debt. Having an unaffordable debt felt like falling into an abyss every day. Even so, his sister was more concerned about him than herself. As a child, he trusted her words, but his sister still had not come back. That was why the boy had to win. He had to protect her. Juyuk said that he didn't have to order him. Children grow up while being protected by adults. That was something adults must do, so there was no need to order him. Juyuk then went to the first round himself. On the other side, a green-haired guy appeared. The host told them that they could decide who would attack and who would defend and could switch anytime. The host opened the first card. Team 1, the green-haired guy's team, received an attack card and had the first attack. Team 2, Juyuk's team, received a defense card and had to defend the torso. Suddenly, the green-haired guy punched Juyuk in the liver. The liver is the largest organ in the human body, and when shock is applied there, the pain is beyond imagination. Juyuk's opponent knew exactly where to hit. The host then opened a second card. Team 2 got an eye attack card, and Team 1 received an ear defense card. However, hitting with an eye card was not possible, so Juyuk skipped it. The game allowed for one-sided attacks depending on luck with the cards. Juyuk, accumulating bad luck, quickly accepted his situation. He received many hits from his opponent but didn't get any effective cards to attack with. Team 1 was obviously having the upper hand due to the difference in accumulated damage. When the green-haired guy kicked Juyuk in the head, Juyuk could clearly feel something was wrong. He skipped all the cards that were a chip. He didn't feel fear at all. Seeing Juyuk's determination, Team 1's player switched. The new green-haired guy received a knee attack card while Juyuk had a torso defense card. Juyuk's situation worsened round by round, with damage accumulating and his wounds opening. Suddenly, the kid said that Team 2 would also change the defensive player. Juyuk asked the kid what he was talking about. The kid said it was an order and that he wanted to test something. He would make it through no matter what it took. The boy then stood right in front of the green-haired guy. That guy thought the kid had never taken a proper hit before. He smiled and told the boy that the pain was always beyond imagination. The green-haired guy then threw a knee at the boy's stomach, causing him to kneel down, but he somehow managed to stand up. In the next round, the green-haired guy received a forehead defense card, and the boy received a middle finger attack card. The boy believed the card was useless, but Juyuk came over and told the boy that the card was not useless and that he would attack. The green-haired guy laughed, wondering how someone could attack with a middle finger. Juyuk then put his hand on his face, stretched a middle finger with his other hand, and released it with full force. Juyuk focused all his body power into the finger and struck the opponent on the forehead. The opponent's head began bleeding. From that moment on, Team 1 started receiving useless cards, and the flow of the game began to change. Juyuk took all his revenge and now had some powerful move cards. After a few rounds, the green-haired guy told his partner to switch, but his partner refused, saying he should keep taking the risk because it was his order. The partner would continue to attack. He was the king of Team 1 and thought that even if one more attack card came out, the kid would not be able to endure it. However, the kid thought he would endure it no matter what. That was the only way for them to win. In another round, he received an attack on the torso by the foot of an opponent. The boy fell to the ground but somehow managed to stand up again. Team 1 was confused about how he could handle such attacks. In the next round, Juyuk received a fist attack card, and Team 1 had a nose defense card. Juyuk smiled and punched the opponent in the nose. The green-haired guy was knocked away from Juyuk and collided with his partner. With just one hit, Juyuk knocked out both of them. The host congratulated Juyuk for winning. The boy came near him and said that they did it. They really won. The boy explained that there must have been a hidden rule. The longer the king continued to play the defensive role, the more efficient the attack cards would become. The king who ordered sacrifices would eventually run out of subjects to order, while the one who did not order sacrifices would win the battle. Juyuk asked him how he came up with that. The boy replied that it was because they had kept getting bad cards in the beginning. Juyuk then smiled and told the boy that he had worked hard. However, the boy said he didn't think the game was over yet. The host suddenly announced the final game, called Rebellion and Suppression. In this final game, the two remaining players would no longer be a team. Each person would play individually as a king and a citizen. The goal of the citizen was rebellion, while the king's goal was to suppress the rebellion. The game would continue until one of the two players either fainted or gave up. The king must first receive as many attacks as he had previously ordered his citizens. Hearing this, the boy said there must be some other way since they had come this far. But Juyuk suddenly slapped the boy and told him to stop spouting weak words and face the reality. From now on, he and the boy would be fighting each other, and that was the reality. Juyuk told the boy that he was not a very nice person.